Hey everybody, welcome back to K-Man Security. So today we're going to talk about another OWASP Top 10, which will be about broken authentication. So I'm going to try to explain to you what it is, and I'm going to give you a live demonstration on how we can use it using one of our favorite OWASP web applications called CRAPY or Crappy API. Okay, so if you guys are ready, let's get started. All right, everybody, so let's talk about broken authentication. So what is it? So again, we're going to kind of go back through some recent concepts. So again, let's briefly touch about authentication versus authorization. So we think about authentication as who you are. You know, are you who you say you are? So we can kind of think about that as like checking your ID to make sure you're old enough to buy a beer, right? Authorization is what are you allowed to access? So again, think about going to the bar. You know, the bouncer is going to check to see if you are actually who you say you are. So he's going to do the authentication. And then if you're authorized, then he's going to authorize you to come into the bar. Okay. Same thing applies to, broken authentications, kind of APIs, stuff like this. Okay. So let's talk about how do APIs identify users. So they do a few things. They will check it through passwords, sessions, cookies, tokens, and API keys. So this is really, really important. So for most people, they're going to worry about password, session, and cookies. So whenever you're creating like a password, a lot of times what happens is they are going to store your password in a hash. So typically good security practices is they will never, ever, ever actually have your password in plain text. They will automatically convert it to a hash, like maybe AES-256, MD5, whatever that they're using, but it will be at least hashed, so it should be somewhat secure, right? Or a lot of times they use like session IDs or session cookies. And those are also there to act as a defense in depth to make sure that they can identify you and to check your permissions. Because a lot of times these tokens, cookies, stuff like this, they are actually designed to check to make sure that your access is within your role or whatever it is that you're doing in that website or web application. Okay. So let me talk about tokens really quick because I think this is a really complicated subject, but I think it's something that we really should talk about more. So tokens are a way to temporarily give identity pass. So what that means is whenever I'm wanting to access a website, it's going to check for my JWT token. So if I made an account with, let's just say Facebook.com, and it will automatically generate a JWT token. And so whenever I log in, it's going to check my hashing password. It's going to check my JWT token. And if those things match, boom, I can have access. Now, if I'm trying to access something like more serious, like maybe like an admin endpoint, it's going to check that token. And if it's not in like that database or parameter, it's going to say, no, I'm not allowed to see that. So this is really, really important when we're looking at different things that really should not be accessed by normal users. So normal users should not be able to access admin endpoints, databases, stuff like this. So these tokens are there to, one, kind of have like segmentation, kind of make sure that you're staying within your role. And then two, to verify who you say you are, which I think is really, really important. Okay, so that's just a very watered down example about tokens. I will obviously go through a more better example. I will actually break down what a JWT token is in later videos. But for now, I just want to give you a brief idea. Okay, so why do attackers love tokens? So obviously they're easier to steal, so if we're using tools like Kaido, Burp Suite, stuff like this, attackers can grab these tokens, they can reverse engineer them. It's very, really, 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 really easy nowadays to get a JWT token and decrypt it. Really, I mean, just takes a matter of seconds. So obviously for most attackers, they probably spend a lot of time learning to craft and manipulate JWT tokens a lot. Okay, so here's some common authentication mistakes. So we can think about these dangerous mistakes. So we think about weak passwords. So obviously we need to follow a good password policy. Leaked tokens. So if we're able to grab tokens very easily, they're maybe out in the wild or maybe they got left on a GitHub repository or something, this is a big problem. So we need to be very careful about where we put these tokens or how these tokens are stored. Predictable sessions. So I was in a web challenge the other day where they were talking about a session cookie that actually was just the day's date, right? So whenever you're looking at that, you can sit there and predict, well, maybe the admin logged in today as well. And then I can log in with the admin session cookie and boom, maybe I have admin access. So predictable sessions are really, really dangerous. So we need to be very careful about that. No MFA. I think this is also a big problem. So if we're not initializing 2FA, MFA, whatever, then we're running into problems because now I can sit there and manipulate someone's token, someone's password, and I can just jump in without needing that extra setup or that extra authentication, right? And then of course, some people make tokens that never expire. This is really, really bad. So actually, I was recently taking a course about Go APIs, and we were making JWT tokens, and I went over a course about refreshing tokens. So maybe the token would refresh every 60 seconds, right? Or maybe every 1 hour. And I think that was really cool because it showed that this algorithm was constantly moving, it was constantly shifting. So then when someone tries to grab your session cookie or your token and they try to use it, well, they only have like so many minutes to use it, or else they won't be able to access it. So I think it's great. Now, what do I think is the best practice for that number? I don't know. I think 1 hour is actually pretty good. Maybe it could be every 30 minutes, something like this. I need to look at the best practices. But the most important thing is it needs to be refreshed. It needs to constantly change. Because if it never expires, now that's the bigger problem. Okay? All right, so JWT, very simple version, okay? So remember this as a signed identity token. So obviously this information will have like your username, your role, and an expiration date, whatever. So this makeup will kind of show you what a JWT token is. It was designed for that. Now, they're powerful, they're strong, but they're also easy to unravel, okay? So obviously we need to kind of look at that. So again, later videos, I'm going to dedicate a whole video to JWT just because it is really a complex subject and it's something that we should talk about more in depth, okay? But this is just a very brief idea of what a JWT token is and what it contains, okay? So here's some dangerous API behavior. So obviously APIs often trust tokens too much. So if you have some sort of token, even if you don't even have the right algorithm, maybe you do like a non-attack, right? Then a lot of times it'll get accepted. I've been there. I've taken out certain parts of the JWT token. I've changed the name of the admin. I've changed the name of the user. I've changed the role, and 9 times out of 10, I will usually get a 200 OK. So all it's checking for is if it has some sort of bearer token, authorization token, and if it's valid and it looks good, it'll get accepted. So very, very dangerous. You have to be very mindful about how we deal with these, right? So again, think about this. If the token has no expiration, has weak secrets, has poor validation, it's just a recipe for disaster, okay? So some real world impact just to kind of think about it. So we can think about account takeover, admin access, financial fraud, medical record access. This is really, really important because, you can sit there and say, well, I found this person's email. I was able to forge the token. Now I have access to that account. And now I can change the password. I can change the username, whatever I need to do. Same thing with admin access. As long as they can get access to that panel, we're in big trouble. Financial fraud. We don't want this to happen, right? We don't want to log into someone's bank account and steal all their money or transfer money or whatever. So we need to be very mindful. And then, of course, medical record access. This is really important. This is HIPAA. This is PII. This is something that is the worst nightmare for anyone, especially in security. So if we're running into these problems, then we're having a nightmare for not only compliance, but also for the company, okay? All right, so why does this happen? So obviously this happens because we've created weak secrets. We have created poor validation. We didn't really make sure we have a good proper steps to make sure that we're checking the tokens correctly or the cookies correctly. Obviously, we give too much value to the token, right? So I think if we just sit there and say, okay, this token is good for everywhere, then it can access so much information and it can be really dangerous, okay? All right, so how can developers prevent this? So they need to have like strong authentication. So they need to make strong secrets. So they need to come up with better hashing algorithms, better storage, stuff like this. Or they need to implement MFA into the code. They need to make sure that people are actually using MFA. It has to be a requirement. Token expiration. That token has to expire. It has to refresh. It has to change. If not, it's going to just become a disaster. And of course, proper validation. So we need to make sure that every time a user is logging in or they are moving to different parts of the website or web application, that the website is validating that token. And so that combination of the refresh token, the validation, stuff like this, helps to ensure that this person is who they say they are, and they have the proper access to the certain web application, right? So I think with these, if developers can take the time to do this, it's going to prevent a lot of financial loss and a lot less headaches. I know one thing that I was told a long time ago, and I think it's still very important, is you should really develop everything correctly the first time rather than develop it when there's a disaster. Because when there's a disaster, it's already too late, you've already lost the money. But if you develop it the first time and it works well, then there's a new threat you have to deal with. But at least this portion, at least you're covered here, right? All right, so key takeaways. So remember, broken authentication happens when APIs trust weak identity systems, they fail token validation, and they expose reusable credentials. So again, guys, we have to think about this as developers and as users. So always think about, how is the web application trusting you? How is it storing your password? What is the token they're using? Are they using cookies? So the more they're using, the more that they're validating, the better off. And of course, if they're using good password policies, even better. Okay, so guys, let's go ahead and do a real world exercise. I'm going to take you through another CRAPY web application tutorial. And this time we're actually going to look at how to change someone else's email. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with that. All right, everybody. So now we're at the crappy web application. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of see if we can find someone's email and see what we can do with it. So the big goal is to change someone else's password or email, and we can access that account. So that should be pretty interesting. And we may say, oh, that's pretty challenging, but in this tutorial, it's going to be pretty quick. So let's go ahead and look at the community. We'll kind of see what's in here. Cool. We have a couple users. Looks good. Okay, so let's go into Kaido, and we're going to kind of look at the community API. So as we see, there's the different users, different things. So let's go ahead and look at Adam, because I think Adam looks like the most common user. So we'll just go ahead and take this email, and we're going to see if we can change it somehow. Okay, so let's go ahead and log out of our account for a minute. And we're going to actually do this forgot password endpoint. So here, actually, it's very interesting. It says enter your email ID. So we can do this right away. Now, I want to make a disclaimer from what I've seen in like real world situations. So in this situation, it's going to send like an email to the Mailhawk system, which is like their kind of open end mail system. But I think in a real attack scenario, what's going to happen is you're going to have to actually intercept this data and catch it in like Kaido or Burp Suite and actually go through it. I couldn't do that when I was getting ready to show this demonstration, but in this scenario, since we already have access to the email, we have the ability to change it. But in a real world situation, what's going to happen is we're going to capture that OTP token in the traffic. Okay, so for now, let's just go ahead and send the OTP password. So let's just say, okay, it's been sent to your registered email. So now we should be able to look here. And we do see this, right? So we do this. Now, this has a very short expiration, so we're going to manipulate this right away. So obviously, I already have this. We're going to change it to our normal password. So it's going to be tester123. And then it should work. Now, maybe I was a little slow, so maybe it might not register, but let's check. Okay, so it looks like it has been verified and set up. So that's pretty cool. So now we're going to kind of go in here and we're going to set up that email. So let's see, I already have the traffic, so I'm going to copy this again. We're going to throw that in here, and we're going to put in the password. So we're going to put in tester123, and then if it works, I should have access to Adam's account. Okay, so it looks like I do. Looks like it's not going to pop up with the dashboard, which is okay. It kind of didn't for me last time, but as you can see, I can access Adam's account. I can change his email. I can kind of do whatever I want at this point. So I have access. I can upload a video, do something incriminating, whatever I need to do. Okay. So guys, this is a really good example of broken authentication. So if I'm able to access, some sort of email, kind of access OTP, check it for weak passwords, stuff like this, this is dangerous, right? So guys, hopefully you guys liked this walkthrough. Hopefully it was insightful for you, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.